You are listening to Productivity Straight Talk with your host, Amber De La Garza. Amber is a sought-after productivity coach, trainer, speaker, and writer who gives entrepreneurs the straight talk on personal productivity. No BS, fluff, or overused jargon. Just actionable strategies to get results and succeed in business. And here is your host, Amber De La Garza, the Productivity Specialist.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to Productivity Straight Talk. Today is episode 60, The Automation Advantage. Letting robots take care of the rest so that you can focus on your best with Zachary Sexton. If you're an entrepreneur who wants to take consistent, massive, focused action in your business and life, then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you've joined me. I'm looking forward to you listening in on my discussion with Zach Sexton. Zach helps entrepreneurs organize their work. Zach and I go back a few years because we're both in the productivity space, and we've really enjoyed just kind of geeking out and discussing all the amazing ways to be our most productive selves. So I thought it would be great to have him on as a guest. And in today's episode, you will discover the benefits of automation, some of the must-have automation apps, how to reclaim time using templates, my hack for effective follow-up, and so much more. So let's dive right in and meet Zach. Hey, Zach, welcome to Productivity Straight Talk. How are you doing today?
I am doing very good. Thank you so much for having me on, Amber.
Oh, it is my pleasure. I'm really looking forward to this episode because I think we have something very interesting to talk about. And, I really think that we come to the same results, but come about it totally different. And so I can't wait for our listeners to hear how you can get the results, but use a lot of different techniques. And so we're going to kind of unfold all that today for our listeners.
Wonderful. Look forward to it.
Okay. So before we dive into today's topic, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself in your own words.
Absolutely. So I help entrepreneurs organize their work. So there's professional organizers for your closets, for your basements, for your attic, for your notes. And I basically, any bit of work that an entrepreneur has to do, I help them create a system for it so they can have more control, delegate more, automate more, which we're going to talk about, and delete and defer the work that doesn't make the most sense for them.
Yes. So really just giving them that clarity on what they need to be focusing on, right?
Definitely. You and I both have read this book before. Maybe some of your listeners who are fans of productivity have listened to this book before, but David Allen says, your brain is for having ideas, who wrote Getting Things Done, not holding them. So I essentially try to do that for the personal entrepreneur, but as well as their business. So a lot of times things can be stuck up in your head. We were actually just talking about an interview you've recorded. I don't know if it's been published yet. I don't think it's been published yet, with Josh Fonger, who is the head coach over at Work the System. And he talks about getting your systems, your repeated processes out of your head and written and documented down. Today, we're going to be talking about how to get some of the repeating processes that you do automated with some simple bits of software. And really another area that I love focusing on is how to get the work, the day-to-day, the to-dos, the projects, the tasks that need to be done out of your head and into a trusted system. So basically it's just, man, it is so much easier if it's in black and white on a piece of paper or possibly an application where you can see it, you can control it, you can understand it, you can prioritize it, you can organize it. That's what I found in my own life. That's what a lot of the clients who I work with find after creating this system for themselves.
Okay, so let's walk our listeners through the topic that we're going to be focusing on today is about automation. And I have been quoted in previous episodes talking about how automation and when you really invest in automation through different programs, looking at that is ideally like an employee, because you have to invest time in setting them up. You have to invest money into them. But once they work, it's a return on your investment through the automation. And just like onboarding a new employee, it's not always the smoothest process, but at the end of the day, it is ultimately absolutely worth it for the leverage of the entrepreneur or business owner.
Definitely. And it's great that you use that word return on investment. Another word you could use is return on time investment, return on energy investment, return on financial investment. It's important to think about that up front because it's very easy to do one of two things. You could take the route that a lot of my clients take, which is keep doing things the brute force, old fashioned way over and over and over and over again, just because you don't want to invest the time to do something that could potentially make it easier for you because you're just, this way's worked. Or you could take the other end of the spectrum, which I sometimes fall on, is maybe getting too optimistic. Like, oh, I did this once. Oh, you know what? There's an easier way to do it. Let me create this program and set up this Zapier and do this and do that. When, oh, I'm not actually doing that all that often. That happens once a month. Probably wasn't worth the 3 hours I spent putting it together. So knowing and understanding the return on investment that you hope to get up front is super important. And that's why the ones when we're talking about putting together this podcast that I think are very important are the ones that have to do with your client intake and onboarding. Because not only is it going to give you a return on your time. So for example, a simple tool that we both use to be talking to each other right now at this exact time is a scheduling application. The one that you use is Schedule Once. The one that I use is Calendly. There's a million other scheduling tools out there as well, just depending on your need. But that saves us both time and energy, not going back and forth trying to like, how's next Tuesday for you? No, that doesn't work necessarily. How about next Wednesday? And then for you like to gather extra information, maybe my headshot or bio or extra bits of information, which a schedule application can do in addition to just finding the time that works best for people. But when you're potentially working with a new client or taking on a new partner, if you can reduce the friction in finding that time to working together, that's going to also give you a return on investment in the dollars and cents case. Because if you have a lead or if you have a prospect and you let that email ping pong drag on for a little bit too long, you could lose momentum. Maybe they're not as excited about working with you as they were that first day when you could have found a time very quickly. That's why the ones that I focus on in our conversation that we're going to have, as well as a free course that people can check out over at automateyourbooking.com, all have to do with onboarding and getting clients into your system.
Okay. All right, Zach, let's take this. I think that's all really good information. Let's take this a step back, and then we're going to kind of pull back all the things you just said. So the first thing that I heard was you are kind of like an automation geek, because if you do something once, you're like, okay, I'm going to spend 3 hours on trying to automate this. But
I can. I don't always do that. I'm susceptible to doing that.
Exactly. Well, that's because that's how our minds think, is like, oh my gosh, there's got to be a better way. And so if we're not conscious about that and knowing what kind of time investment it takes to create that automation, that's a black hole that not just you or myself can get into, but so can some of our listeners. So the advice that you're giving is to choose things that are going to be repetitive tasks that once you invest in the setup, you're getting that return back over and over. And that's really, really important for our listeners to hear when they're thinking, well, where do I start with automation? And where I started in automation is exactly where you already said, and that was my scheduling links. And so let's just take that back and explain what scheduling links are. Go into, maybe you can share with us why you chose yours, and I'll share with why I chose mine, so that listeners can kind of get both sides and exactly what some of those key benefits are for using a scheduler. So Zach, share with us the scheduler link program or app you use, and then I'll do the same.
All right. I revealed it already, Calendly. It's just Calend, like CALENDLY.
And so why do you use that program? Why do you choose that over, say, the program I use, Schedule Once?
Because I think Schedule Once is ugly.
Visually ugly.
And I think it's hard to set up. Mainly, it's the user interface, the user experience. I think Calendly, it's very easy for me to add or change or manipulate the links that I send out to people. So what a scheduler is, it's usually a software as a service, so an online web application that allows people to sync their calendars and find a time that fits best for them. It also allows you to ask questions, maybe, hey, what are we talking about? What's the agenda for this? What are some questions that you might have for me ahead of time? What are some materials that we need to prepare for? So some examples other than Schedule Once and Calendly are you could book me, Assistant Schedule Once, Acuity, Meeting Bird, Appointlet. There's probably more. These I'm just reading from a list of a few that I have. And the reason for Calendly is just a nice user interface. However, I am thinking of changing to Meeting Bird because it has a few extra functionality bits that I like. One of them being, if I'm scheduling an appointment with more than one person, that it will allow multiple people to pick 3 times that are best for them, and then And then the organizer of the event can be like, oh, okay, these times overlap. I'm going to pick this time. So I just think that's an extra little feature that I would like to have that Calendly does not currently have. That's a little extra automation bit.
Okay, excellent. So I do agree that Calendly looks prettier than Schedule Once. But the reason that I've chosen Schedule Once is obviously it integrates with all of my other programs that I use. One, that's most important. Two is because it allows me to approve a suggested appointment time. With some of these other apps, what happens is you show your availability and they choose a time and then they're booked. Like that's it. And for me, I require everyone to suggest 2 times that work for them. And then I pick the best time that works for me because I'm always looking at trying to like batch interviews together or batch certain appointments together. Or if I could put in a buffer room, it allows me to look at the context of my schedule and then pick the best one that works for me. So that's another reason why it was really important for me to ultimately finalize the approval of which appointment I accept. And then lastly, I use Schedule Once. So I have 3 different links that I use. I use one that is my main Meet with Amber page. So like if I say we're going to have a discovery call, we want a 30-minute meeting, a 15-minute meeting, like I have multiple links on this page, but it's available only certain days of the week that I take those types of appointments. And then I have another link that I use just for scheduling interviews, whether it's people I'm interviewing or if people ask to interview me, I send over the link because I do those generally only on Monday and Friday. So it only shows availability Monday and Friday. And then the last link that I use is for my breakthrough sessions because I also batch those on certain days and only show availability certain days of the week. And that really, I wasn't able to find all of that type of functionality in another scheduling app. What I was interested in with yours, though, is that you said you're able to manipulate the times available with a specific link. Now, I have really been wanting to do that. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about how you do that.
So with Calendly, it's $10 a month. And this is similar with You Could Book Me and Meeting Bird and Appointlet, I believe. So all 3 of those, or 4, I don't know how many I just said, all 3 to 4 of those have the ability to create as many scheduler links as you would like. So I have some for, just like you, some for podcast interviews, some for client coaching calls that I only give to current clients, some for discovery calls. And I have different days of the week, like you, designated for different types of work. So there's days that I do more interviews. There's days that I do more networking. There's days that I do more coaching calls. So it allows me to theme and organize my week. And I adjust the times 2 different ways. One, just the schedule link itself. So similar to you, I would say for podcasting, I'm only available on Friday. So that's when I do it. If people want to book with me, they book with me on Friday. They can do any Friday in the world as long as it's Friday. So that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is, and I'm sure Schedule Once, I'm not sure because I've used Schedule Once in the past. I know Schedule Once works the same way, is if I want to block out certain times, I just put it on my calendar. And when you've blocked out a time on your calendar, it no longer allows people, and I'm talking calendar, like I use Google Calendar. I think you may use Outlook, but if you put an appointment on your actual calendar application, it doesn't allow you to be double booked. So that's the quick way that I adjust times. You can also go into the application and say, hey, this next Friday, don't allow anybody to book me. But let's say I'm going on vacation like you are in July, and I say, I don't want to be booked for those times. Rather than going into Calendly, I would just put an event for 2 weeks that says I'm going to be on vacation. And then as long as I mark that event as busy, I won't be able to be booked during that time. So that's how I adjust it.
Okay, yeah, that's exactly how I adjust mine too. I can't even imagine my world without using scheduling links.
I know. Once you go schedule links, you never go back. And that's both schedule link and there's another tool out there that was not on our list of tools to talk about, but it's called Text Expander, which allows you to create keyboard shortcuts.
Well, it should be on our list because I'm a big fan of Text Expander.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I couldn't remember if you were or not, but it's totally one of those where I'm always trying to convince people to get this application because once you get it, you realize how much time and how much energy it can actually save you. Like I just was creating a text expander this morning for a coaching client that wanted a little bit more accountability. So I've got these snippets that I'm going to send her on Sunday and on Wednesday that asks her a number of questions. It also has links to our shared Trello board where we're doing most of our work and a Google Doc where we're writing our notes. So it's got all this, and all I have to do is go XFU, which her name's Swan. So its follow-up is that, not FU, like I don't like this person. And it pops out this whole email that I just have to make a couple little edits and sends it off. So it's keyboard shortcuts that create bigger bits of text or links or even images, actually. And one of my favorite text expander snippets is ;VC, which goes to a URL, zacharysexton.com/virtual coffee, which I don't know if I should actually say on the air, but this is something I do privately to network with people, which goes to a landing page that says, hey, I like coffee. I also like breaks and smart conversations. And if you are seeing this page, I like you too. And it's got this little GIF of coffee being poured into mugs. And then it has a link to my Calendly where people can book virtual coffees with me. And that's from a few days a week at 10 o'clock. I set that time aside to do my networking. And now ;VC, forever in the future is like, if I ever want to meet with somebody, it's not, hey, we should meet sometime. What do you want to do that? When do you want to make that happen? It's just ;VC. I've like automated my networking, and it's a lot of fun. And I drink a lot of coffee and I talk to a lot of people.
Okay, I love that example. So I also use Text Expander because, I mean, come on, my name is Amber de la Garza with capitals and spaces.
Yeah.
And if I mean, like even the littlest thing is like signing off your name, like anywhere. So I just type DLG or like my URLs. I always sign off, have a productive day, Amber de la Garza. So I just put PD. My URL, I just type URL and it gives you the whole spelled out HTT, whatever.
Definitely.
Colon,
Semicolon WS
yeah.
is mine. Just semicolon website is kind of what it stands for. So you do shortcuts that make sense to you. And God, it's just like, why type De La Garza? That's way too much work.
Way too much. But what I love the most, though, is when you get those little emails that says how much time you saved this month. Do you get those emails?
Oh, I'm still on the old version and I haven't updated because I haven't found an easy way to transfer it over. So I do get those emails and every month it's like, you're not using Text Expander. I was like, yeah, I am. I'm using the old version. Sorry.
That's funny. So like, it'll tell you like, you saved 27 minutes this month. You've shortcutted like 230 times or like whatever.
But it's so much more than 27 minutes because all that's doing, and it's great. I do love that as a benefit, but all that's doing is saying, what's your average typing speed? Okay, this is what Text Expander did for you. But when you do a Text Expander, you've got the very specific wording that would have taken you longer to think of or craft, or the website maybe is not a good example, but if you have an email template or a sign off or just like a common phrase that you like to say, it's going to take you longer and you're going to have more typos. And I don't know, it's a way to automate your thinking. I feel like that is just very exciting to people like us, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully those listening too. But I utilize it for email templates too, because I always say like, we have best of intentions to give like 5-star service to our clients. And what that might mean is expanding out and fully communicating something in an email. But then we're at our desks and the emails are lining up and the phone calls are ringing and whatever, life is happening. And you're like, I just have to get this email out. And so you write it in its most brief form, but it's not the same experience for the person on the other end that could have experienced what that was if you'd fully thought it out. And so templates for me allow you to sit down and say, what is the user experience you want your clients to have and experience? And then just lay all that out. And so I definitely have tons of templates when someone decides to coach with me and it says coaching, yes, not paid. So then they get a link. Here's your invoice. Here's your assessment. Here's your scheduling link. Like it's all in there with one little QR code. So I've really enjoyed doing that, and not just the app, because like this really isn't about apps, and I want our listeners to hear that, because while you're using one for your link scheduler and I'm using another, and we both happen to love Text Expander, it's more about the efficiency that is being created behind the scenes, and utilizing Text Expander. That's all about what you put into it. It's only as robust as how many snippets you create.
And I think your example actually does a very good job of an email that you may craft or overcraft or undercraft, where you're working with somebody and you want them to pay you money. It's not always easy to have that conversation, but if you take some time up front to really wordsmith it, and I don't know about you, I'll take enough time up front. I was like, okay, I think this is a pretty good way of saying it. And then the next time I do the snippet, I'll be like, oh, there could be a comma there, or I'm going to change this word out a little bit. So I'll iterate that best email, that best thinking 2, 3, 4 times. And then by the time I send it the 5th time, one, not only does it take no energy for me to grab the payment link and decide how I want to delicately say, hey, give me money. It's said in the best way possible, just like you were saying. So maybe I'm going to use that going forward. It's not just time saving. It's just like, it's allowing your best, most clear thinking to happen repeatedly. Same with the scheduler. It allows your proactive thinking mind to be like, what days make the most sense for me to hop on calls with people, or to do networking, or to do podcasting. So you've done that thinking ahead of time. So when somebody emails you and says, hey, can I jump on a coaching call? You don't have to reactively think like, oh, what day do I do coaching calls? Should I make an exception? No, you can just respond and be like, all right, well, here's the link. I will see you next Wednesday or Thursday or Monday. You've done your thinking ahead of time, and the tool just allows you to repeat that thinking and get leverage from it. Just like you were talking about at the beginning, like an employee that does something for you.
Right. So we're talking about how it can help you. It's just a tool. So these are fundamental productivity methodologies, right? So we're talking about theming our days. You and I both do that. Obviously, we luckily both do podcast interviews on Fridays, and that's why we're talking.
I have such a hard time thinking of good examples. Like, oh yeah, everybody out there listening with podcasts, you want to know about this example. But there's meetings with anybody in your organization, employees, vendors, people who are under you. People who are over you. There was somebody that I was reaching out to for a potential contracting job that I was looking into. And he asked me what times are best for me. And I used, this is another little sexy bit of Calendly. It's called ad hoc meeting. You've got a Google Chrome integration that allows you to just push a button in Gmail and find times that work in your availability, just ad hoc. So I use that ad hoc scheduling, and we got on a call earlier today. He's like, that was so cool. I really like that little calendar link thing that you put in. Let's do that for our next call.
Yeah, it really makes it a good experience for the person using it, because they're so used to the emails going back and forth, and that is a disaster.
Definitely. I feel like earlier on, and I actually had more of a text expander snippet explaining what a schedule link was, but I think that one's becoming common enough where you don't have to explain it. I felt that 2, 3, 4 years ago, when I originally started using schedule links, I would have a lot of language around like, hey, I'm doing this so we can save that inevitable back and forth of finding a time that works best for you. I don't even do that anymore. I don't really even preface it too much anymore, because I think people are getting used to that type of, and appreciating really that type of tool and that type of efficiency.
I agree. Okay, so now we've tackled automating scheduling of meetings. So just to finish up actually my thought on that. So the scheduling link tool actually allows you to theme your days, whatever your themes are, and batch. So you can have an afternoon where you're batching a particular type of appointment, or maybe it's external appointments out of the office and you batch those like a couple times a month. So these strategies and methodologies of let's batch our activities, let's theme our days, you can actually have that reflective in your schedule, utilizing these scheduling links. And I think that's been really, really helpful. But Zach, just to tie up and review what we've talked about, because I want to jump into at least one more tool. So we've done scheduling links, and we've done text expander for automating long form emails, common verbiage that we use. Let's talk about automating. What's another automation in your business that you think would be valuable for our listeners?
Well, I think one that's just simple and an easy win and can be done right away is having automatic follow-up. If you're a service-based entrepreneur, you likely are needing to follow up with your clients to get them to pay, to get them to book with you, to get on that initial discovery call, to do a lot of things. Like your business is only one part of their business. Life gets busy, you got to follow up. But it becomes difficult if you're trying to juggle following up with prospects, following up with clients, following up with vendors, as well as shipping that big project and updating your website and all the other million things that you have to do in your personal and professional life. So I don't like to remember that kind of stuff because I feel like for me, it just takes up headspace. I have a bad memory, so I'm going to let a lot of things slip through the cracks. So there's a number of different ways you can automate your follow-up. And one of the easiest ones that I like to use if you're a Gmail user is called Boomerang for Gmail. And so what it does, if you're wanting to make sure a person follows up, takes a particular action with an email that you've sent, you can schedule the email to be sent out later so that you know that they're going to be available for it. Or you can say, send this email now, and if I don't hear back from them in 4 days, follow up automatically, or put this email back into my inbox. Or if they don't click a link within 2 days, follow up automatically. Or regardless, let's say I want this email coming back into my inbox automatically in 6 days, because that's when we're going to meet next. And that's when I want to have a reminder about that email. So Boomerang for Gmail is great. Let me open up my course to remind me about the other automatic follow-up applications that there are.
I actually use Boomerang for Outlook. And
yes, I forgot they have. How long have they had that for?
I'm not sure how long. I've been using it, I would say about 6 months now. I don't use it exclusively. I was more like put my toes in the water. I loaded it. It's on my computer. I mostly use it to pause my email, which is another really cool feature.
Oh, yeah. That is a cool feature. That's a really nice feature.
The Boomerang app really it's a program that does what I've already been doing for years with my email. And so I want to hear you just explain like how you use it with the app, which is good. For me, I got to tell you, because I've been doing it on my own, and I'll explain how I do it for so long, it was scary for me to like throw it out there and then the email disappears for 5 days or 6 days, kind of like out in the world. And that's kind of like what the Boomerang theory was, right? Well, for me, anytime I'm sending an email out that I want any kind of follow-up on, so it could be an email to you, Josh, about let me get your bio and your picture and like whatever, or it could be to a potential client. I BCC myself on the email, and then it comes right into my email box. And when it comes into my email box, I create a task that says waiting for follow-up, and I schedule it for 3 days, 6 days, 10 days, like whatever, just like Boomerang does. Right? And then it sits in my tasks. And then when the day comes, I have a task that says waiting for follow-up with the original email in it. And so what was ironic is I've been doing this for years, and it was just my own little hack. And then Boomerang came around, and I was like, dang, somebody else actually does this, and they made it really cool. Except for I just didn't fully adopt it because I already had a very similar system.
Definitely. I've seen Boomerang for Outlook on the list of alternative applications. I think that's a great system, and it gives you a lot of trust. One thing that I only use Gmail, so I can't say if it does it for Outlook or not, but it does create a folder on the sidebar in Gmail that says all of the boomerangs that are outstanding. So that's a place where you can look to know where they are. It does take a little bit of trust in the system to be like, are these really going to come back to me? Like, I really want to close this client. I really want to get this deal. And in that case, I might recommend doing something very similar to what you're doing, is use some sort of task list or task manager for all the people or things that you're waiting on. That way, you know you've got some confidence that you have it in a secured place, but you can also allow that email to boomerang back in automatically and not have to do that extra legwork. Some other applications that do the same thing are followup.cc, and Sanebox is another one that does that, plus a whole heap of other things that I don't know if we need to necessarily get into. And then most CRMs, the one I use is Contactually. Close is another good one that I've been messing around with recently. Most CRMs have the capability, if you send out an email, you can add a task like, hey, remind me in 7 days to send their kid a soccer ball because it's his birthday and he likes soccer. So there's a lot of different systems that can automate the reminder system. But the reason that Boomerang is free, I think you could do 10 to 15 a month. So I've never actually even paid for it. And it's just a really easy, fun win. It takes seconds to download it. And then you've got that taken care of if you can trust it.
Yes, yes. So I do want to highlight the one reason I use it. So for those of you that have to work in your email, but you're not time for you to process your emails, you're really trying to get work done, pausing your inbox so that the emails still aren't coming in and trying to catch your attention, that's been a huge win for me. It's a little pause button. I like that. It's not automation particularly, but it certainly helps with our focus. So just to wrap this up, you did reference a CRM. You said you use Contactually, and I use Entreport. And Entreport, most of my lead and lead follow-up is now living in Entreport as of like the last 6 months because they transitioned.
Oh man, fancy.
In January. But again, let's just, you know what? I think that this is really good for listeners to really see and hear that we are both in very similar businesses. We're both solopreneurs or small teams, and yet we are finding ways to automate without even using the exact same programs. It's that the goal of being automated and having the most efficiency with our time and the resources we have can be found with technology. And it doesn't need to be fancy, overwhelming technology, but rather technology that can be quite simply set up. And I think everything we touched on today, with the exception of Entreport, I'll say that, is a pretty easy setup for automation. Entreport is definitely a higher level automation that you're going to need some help with. And so I don't want to lead you down the wrong way. It's a phenomenal program, but it certainly needs a lot of setup time.
And when it comes to the return on investment and return on time, I would say you use a tool like Entreport for your contacts. And as far as teaching goes, I use a tool like ConvertKit. And that's one where you can automate some of your teaching, you can automate some of your messages, but you want to be further down the line. So the tools that we talked about today, text expander, scheduler links, and automatic follow-up with Boomerang, you could use those at almost any time. But you're totally right. Getting into a tool like Entreport or ConvertKit or automatic lead capture, or even creating robust booking forms and surveys, you got to have some clarity on what exactly that you're doing. And I would do the system old school at least 7-8 times before trying to create too big or too robust of automation, because you'll not only end up maybe not getting that return on investment, but rebuilding it over and over and over again, or creating an experience that you didn't actually want to create for potential customers.
Yes, absolutely. I think that there's a big need and a place for automation in our businesses. But Zach, I don't know about you, but I've had the dark side of automation. So one, frustration, or when programs are not talking to each other when they should, it can create some stress, right? Like you're like, oh my gosh, like the system's broken. And if it has to do with like your client facing interaction, it doesn't feel good, right? Like you're freaking out. You want to get it fixed because you're potentially losing clients. But here's the deal. You could also do it all manually and you miss steps and you're not consistent, or you're delegating it to an employee and they don't show up. So there's no system that's perfect, but I'd rather use a system that is up more often than not and certainly very, very consistent. And I have found that to be true with automation.
Definitely. I would say almost everything that we've talked about, and even things that we haven't talked about on the show, they're going to be more consistent than you. They're going to be more consistent than me. They're going to be more consistent than anybody that delegates, because that's just how they were built. Occasionally they'll break down. Occasionally you'll make a mistake and maybe not put the right link or the right automation in the right spot, and something that you wouldn't have liked to happen happens. But you could be careful with it, and you can double check it and make sure things are looking the way that you would expect them to look. And gosh, now that I'm thinking about it, this would be a good system to put into your business, is having a regular check of all these different automations. Like, hey, is everything working well? How's my onboarding? How's my mass communication? How's my scheduling? Is everything looking all right? So regularly checking up and making sure that things are looking the way that they want to look. Even with that extra check or extra piece that you'll need to put in there, you're still, if you're building the right automation, it's going to be able to save a lot of time.
I agree. Actually, Zach, my team and I do that. So my content manager does an audit once a month where she goes on my website as the client and goes in and submits forms and signs up for things and reads things and just has that whole journey through the forward-facing website back.
Well, that is a great system. That is a system ZacharySexton.com needs.
So maybe I'll share that checklist with you. We literally have a checklist. It says go through, we're checking older pages, we're checking random links, we're checking forms, and then so on and so forth. And then I have my online business manager, which just came on in the last maybe about 6 weeks. And her job is to have the entire onboarding experience once somebody signs up on my email list. So she has probably, because there's a hack where you can do like your Gmail account. So like say my Gmail was Amber De La Garza, it'd be plus, and you can add any extension to it. So we have tons of contacts that has her name in it, Candace, because she goes in and acts as if she's a client coming in at any point in the system, and she wants to experience it as the client. So this is where you find, once there's so much automation, we have 50 different emails through our automation system. So if we spelled something wrong or something's formatted wrong or whatever, like it was there and it could be lost if we're not actually utilizing the system as a client. So I have 2 people that do that on a regular basis just to catch that stuff.
Yeah. I always go through, if I create any email sequence, I always go through it once or twice to catch it all. And I always catch some. And I'm sure there's a few more in there because I don't have a little team like you. That's wonderful.
Yeah. I honestly and it shouldn't be me. So that's a great idea of delegating. Like I can look at an email and read it because I read things as if they should be. So random thing about myself. So like I'm editing it as I look at it. And then so I'm not seeing it for what it is, and there might be an error. So I'm the so wrong person to be looking for errors on an email because I think everything I send out looks good. And 9 times out of 10, you will always find an error. In fact, anybody that gets an email from me personally and there's an error, it came from me personally and did not come from an automated.
If there's no error, it didn't come from you. And there's a tool out there, because this seems like a very app-heavy episode anyway, so I'll throw it out, called Grammarly, that help with little punctuation and grammar errors.
So do you use that?
I do use that. And it helps a lot with emails because I'm the same way. However, I think that it should be like, oh, that's totally what I wrote. But there'll be lots of little things that I miss. And Grammarly doesn't catch them all, but it catches a lot.
It does. So I actually use it as well to try and curve the edits or the sending out of typos.
That's probably why we like Text Expander so much, is because we know, okay, finally, this email probably doesn't have any mistakes in it. And it was easy to send.
Yes, exactly. I was going to actually say that earlier, is like everything in Text Expander for me had to be reviewed by somebody else because I know that I'm going to replicate that how many times every time I use the Text Expander. So I want to make sure they're right for sure.
Yeah, it is frustrating when you're like, oh man, I've sent this snippet like 10 times and there's a big old mistake right there.
Yeah, for sure. So then now we just opened up the can of worms of the human error to automation, is that if you've got an error, it gets multiplied through every time it gets automated. But that just means, slow it down, cross your T's, dot your I's, and rest assured that there is a lot of time being reclaimed with automation. And in fact, I'm a true believer that the client experience is so much better and more thorough because day to day, I just don't feel like we have the time to give them that level of service that ultimately automation does give them. And so I'm definitely a big fan of it. I'm always looking like yourself for ways to improve efficiency for, my company, my team, and specifically, certainly myself. So, Zach, this has been a really, really good conversation. And I'm sure we've made a lot of people give some thought to, okay, I have that, I don't have that, or I've been doing things the same way all the time because I'm afraid of automation. And I think our advice to them, Zach, is, just start with one, right? And a simple one and something that will reclaim some time and then build on that once you see it works.
Absolutely. Because as somebody, especially if you're starting out in business, you're wearing so many hats. And I think this is the name of the show. If you can let robots do some things for you and take some stuff off your plate, you're going to end up missing less in the long run. Yes, you got to be careful. You got to make sure you don't automate something that is going to then send out something you don't want over and over and over again. So be careful with the more advanced automations, but the simple ones, it's only going to give you back more time, more energy, more attention, and hopefully make you a little bit more money as well.
Yes, perfectly said, Zach. So if people want to learn more about you and reach out to you, how can they do that?
All right. I want everybody to be my editor because I don't have an editing team. So if you go to automateyourbooking.com, it'll redirect you to a page that allows you to sign up for a free course that I have. So it's a free 5-lesson course on how to automate your client booking. It's really geared for coaches, consultants, and freelancers who want to capture more leads and book more client calls and grow their revenue using a little bit of automation. So automatic follow-up, we've got automatic scheduling, automatic information gathering, which is something we didn't talk about, using booking forms, automatic lead capture, which is something that We touched a little bit on putting places where people can sign up for your newsletter on your website, and then automatic teaching, which we didn't really speak too much to. But it shows you all the tools that you could use, all the different strategies for using those, and it's free.
So where do they find that at? What's the URL?
If you go to automateyourbooking.com.
Okay, excellent. And we'll have those links in the show notes as well. Zach, it's been my pleasure to have you here on Productivity Straight Talk. And as always, chatting it up about productivity because we can both geek out about it. So thank you very much. And I hope you have a productive day.
Thank you so much. And I hope you have a productive day.
I have loved having you listen to this episode of Productivity Straight Talk. But I need to be straight with you. No change, no change. Without taking action, nothing will change for you or your business. So based on what you learned today, what will you take action on? Was there anything that Zach and I were discussing that really hit home for you or gave you an aha about embracing more automation in your business? I hope that you are super clear. I invite you to get really clear on just one next action step. It doesn't need to be huge, but you do need to get clear to be able to take it. To share your actionables and receive support, guidance, and motivation from entrepreneurs just like you, join me on the inside of Productivity Straight Talk private Facebook community. You can join us at productivitycommunity.com. It's in there that I give some exclusive content, Facebook Lives, and go a lot deeper on this episode and every episode. And I want to thank you so much for leaving me great reviews and sharing Productivity Straight Talk with other entrepreneurs. You're not just sharing information, you're giving the gift of improved productivity and maximized profits. I have a special thanks going out to Carol Morgan Cox, who recently said, Amber is the real deal, smart, fun, and knowledgeable. Her podcast episodes are always full of actionable insights and stories to learn from. Thank you so much, Carol, for leaving me that great review. And that's my Straight Talk for you today. And until next time, have a productive week.